that we have a record of tonight's session and we can then share the recording. So welcome everybody. I am thrilled that there are at least 5 of you here out of the almost 800 students that I have. And tonight's session, I need to chat with you about statements. You will have met the statement now in assessment 3, and I suspect that some of you feel a little bit overwhelmed and perhaps a little bit underprepared. So we will chat about the statement and a couple of other things. You will remember that this module is specifically for people who are not police officials. If you're a police official, you have a badge, you have an ID, you have a legislatively mandated task. And when you're a police official, you are legislatively mandated to do what you do. When you question people, when you talk to people, they are not allowed to say, I don't want to talk to you. They are by law obligated to talk to you. This is not so when you work in the private sector, unfortunately. In the private sector, or even in the corporate sector, people don't have to talk to you. There is an example of a security guard who refused to talk to a forensic investigator because he was going to incriminate himself, and he refused to talk, and he was actually, at the end of the day, dismissed because he refused to talk. So there are going to be circumstances, but if you've learned anything from FOR2608, which is also my module, you will know that policy in a company dictates how one does what one does. Having said that, in your space, you will have to find other ways to encourage people to talk to you. You will have to find other ways to get information. You will have to find creative ways of getting the evidence that you need for the cases you are investigating. And this is all covered in the 5 modules of FOR2608. But before we proceed, I really hope that all of you have visited the new module site. This is what it looks like, and the awesome thing about this site is I can track each and every one of you. You see on the top left-hand corner here, by participants. Let me get my pen. Can you see here by the participants? If I click there, all of you appear there. And it tells me when was the last time Mpumulelu was on the site? When was the last time Lee was on the site? So what I want to tell you, if you fail to access your module site, you are going to fail this module specifically. Your assessments by now, you would have found them. They are in the bottom on the left-hand side of the screen, assessment 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you are currently, I think, busy with assessment 3. This is, however, not where you are going to be writing your exams. You will be writing your exams on a totally different portal. And exam department will alert you to where that is, and you will get the necessary links. It will also look totally different to this. So one of the issues, or one of the things that you would have come across now in your assessment 3 is a question about the 9 steps of interviewing. Now, in assessment 3, there is a case study, and you are asked to apply your thinking in terms of the case study. If you write what is in the study guide, you will receive 0 marks. Please make sure that you read the question carefully and that you understand what it is that you must do. What do I mean by this? Okay, so it's logic. These are the 9 steps of interviewing. There are not 10, there are not 8, there are not 11. There are 9 steps of interviewing. Let me ask you something. In this question, in academia, you are told to paraphrase. Now, if we go back 1 step, how do you paraphrase preparation? How do you paraphrase introduction? How do you paraphrase rapport building? In this instance, the answer is very simple. You don't. So the 9 steps in terms of heading, you do not paraphrase those terms. You leave them as is. But the content under each step, in other words, what you situate under preparation, what you situate under introduction, under rapport building, that has to be paraphrased. In other words, written in your own words. But now you're going to ask me, what does paraphrasing mean? What does it look like? So here is an example of work that is hardly paraphrased. So you may have heard that UNISA uses a similarity index or a similarity guideline called Turn It In. It's not plagiarism. It's called a similarity index. And what this does is it tells the supervisor, this is from one of my master students, to what extent did my student sufficiently paraphrase out of the text that they are citing. So the highlighted sections here is how it comes exactly out of another text. Now you will see that there's a little 6 there. Now if I click on that little 6, it takes me to the original document. So this tells me that the student copied almost 100% out of the original document. So there's a pink there, and then there's like a brown. It's 2 different documents that this comes from. But now you're going to ask me, but what's wrong with this? He's cited. Look at there. There are the authors. Paraphrasing is when you rewrite something in your own words and cite. Citing doesn't mean you can copy direct unless you are writing out a piece of legislation, but then it has to be inverted commas. The content of your discussion, you have to rewrite into your own words. So what I did on the right-hand side is the text that has been copied, for a lack of better word. And on the left-hand side, I have given the student an example of what the text could look like if he did a proper paraphrasing. So you will be able to study this after the class. You will be able to go and look at the right-hand side. Then you can compare it to the left-hand side. But at the end of the day, the easiest way to do it is when you translate something into your home language and then you retranslate it into English. That I found usually works the best. Or if you take a sentence and the sentence has a front, a middle, and a back, start with the back part. And then you put the middle and then you put the front. Reverse the order of what is being said. So that is an example of paraphrasing. But like anything in life, the more you practice it, the better you become. In your assessment, in your study guide, you would have met the term first person, specifically on page 19 in paragraph 2.3. What does it mean to write in the first person? What does it mean to write in the second person? And what does it mean to write in the third person? Okay, so let's start with the first one. Study unit 2, which deals with statements and reports and note-taking. You will be taught that statements are to be written in the first person. Now, what does that mean? In first person narration, in other words, talking, the narrator, that's now me, is the person in the story telling the story from their own point of view. The narration usually uses pronouns like I did this and I did that. I saw this, and then I met up with my friend Pamela and we went to a coffee shop, and at the coffee shop we saw this, and then Pamela left and I stayed behind and I saw this and I saw that. So that is the first person where I am telling a story in terms of what I witnessed / experienced. So second person narration is a very little used technique of narrative in which the action is driven by a character which is ascribed to the reader. One is known as you. For example, at the subway station, you wait for 15 minutes on the platform for the train. Finally, the train pulls into the station and you get on board. You take your seat and you take out your book and you begin to read. So that's second person. Now, the third person narration is usually as if the person exists outside of the story and relates the actions of characters by referring to their names or third person pronouns. He did this, she did this, they did that. You would find this in a normal novel where you read the story and the author is explaining, you are sort of looking at the movie, and James entered the office and James saw Melissa on the other side of the table, and James thought Melissa was gorgeous and he looked at Melissa with longing in his eyes. So that is third person. We in crime investigation use first person when we write our reports and when we write our statements. How does this look in the text? Okay, so you will write as if you are telling someone what you are doing or saying. So in other words, explain to me how you will bake a cake. Okay, I will first look for a recipe online, then I will find a recipe and I will download it. Then I will make sure that I have the right ingredients and I will check and I will mark off. I have flour, I have eggs, I have milk. I then will make sure that my oven is on, etc., etc. Or I saw a man at the window as he walked past and he had a black cap on and dark glasses and he walked with a slight limp. I couldn't see the color of his hair because the cap covered the hair. So that is first person narration. So if any question calls for first person narration or a narrative, this is how you write. In academic writing, when you are writing an article or if you are writing your dissertation, you do not write in first person. You will write in second person, in which you refer to yourself as the researcher. The researcher did this or the researcher did that. The researcher aimed to achieve this and the researcher aimed to achieve that. So in crime investigation, first person. In an assessment like we are doing with assessment 3, first person. But when we get to a more academic level where you talk about academic writing, we do not use the first person. It's considered too informal. So you would have met the statement. And a statement is one of the most important documents that an investigator gets to deal with. Because the statement goes to court or it goes to the tribunal like a disciplinary hearing. So statements for court purposes must be under oath or affirmed. Now, in study unit 2, we explain to you on page 17 the different types of statement. I beg you, please, if the instruction tells you, take a statement under oath, do not take an affirmed statement. You will lose marks. Look at the instruction and do what the instruction calls for you to do. We're not going to be talking about dying declarations or warning statements, since it's improbable that you will be using these. Statements consist of 3 primary parts. You have the introduction, you have the preamble, or the introduction, also called the preamble, you have the body, and you have the oaths and commission of oaths section. A statement must be constructed logically, it must be easy to read, it must be divided into paragraphs, and it must be narrated or told in a chronological order. What does that mean? It means if I am telling you my story about what happened this morning, I cannot start with this evening. I have to start my story this morning. Oftentimes, investigators jump too quickly to statement taking, and they don't spend enough time interviewing the witness, interviewing the victim, interviewing the complainant. They don't spend enough time walking through the story, walking through what happened, walking with the person through the sequence of events. Statements have to be anchored in terms of date, time, and place. And I want to say the same counts for an investigative report. If you have to draft an investigative report, and there is one in your study guide, it is on page 29. Whatever you say, whatever you do, has to be anchored in terms of date, time, and place. It cannot be fluffy and it cannot float around in the air. So before you put pen to paper, and I know this is not always possible, but before you put pen to paper, first conduct a thorough interview with the person that must give the statement. When you're at the police station and you're a police officer, I'm not sure if there are any of you here, you first listen to the story. You can ask questions, you can clarify before you take the statement. So let me just reiterate. Statements are anchored in terms of date, time, and place. Statements contain 3 main parts. There has to be an introduction or preamble. There has to be a body, which is chronologically told or narrated. It's broken up into paragraphs. Paragraphs should be numbered. And then there has to be an oath and commissioner of oaths section. So what goes into the introduction or the preamble? And why is this necessary? So a detective seldom takes that first statement from a client or a person that comes to the police station. In a corporate space, this often happens that the forensic investigator takes that first statement. But sometimes these cases don't get solved overnight, or it doesn't end up in a tribunal within the next month. Investigators leave, people leave, and you need to contact that person. You need to be able to contact the witness. You need to be able to contact the victim. And how will you do that if you don't have all their contact details? So what should be there? So there should be the full names and surname of the deponent, the language of the deponent, and the identity number, and if this is not available, a passport number. There is also the age of the deponent, and I'm going to read for you what the first sentence of the statement should sound like. I, Bernadine Carol Benson, state under oath in English, full stop. I am a white female with ID number, aged so-and-so, residing at so-and-so, with telephone number so-and-so. I work as a so-and-so at this company, and this is the address of the company, and this is my cell number, and this is my email address. So it's important that you get all that information. But now I also want to remind you of something. Sometimes people don't have a physical address. Let's say the complainant or the witness lives in Alex or in an informal settlement. How are you going to capture that address? You will have to look at the section that they live in. Usually their houses have roughly painted numbers. You can look at those things to help depict where the person lives. And unfortunately, in our country, it's a reality that people also move a lot. So it's important that you as the investigator keep regular contact with witnesses or victims in the event that they might move, that you now phone them and you give them an update on the case, and you ask them, are you still living at the same place? How do I get hold of you? Oh, no, I moved a long time ago. I now live in Bloemfontein. If you do not reach out, how are you going to know that information? Then the body. The body of the statement is meant to answer the question, what happened? The body has to be chronological, has to be written in the first person as the deponent speaks. As the person tells you what happened, don't paraphrase. Use their exact words, the concepts, the phrases they use. If the person uses a term or a concept or a phrase and you are uncertain about the meaning, perhaps, stop and ask them, you used this term. Is this what you meant? What did you mean by it? Let them clarify. Don't guess. And don't write what you think they meant, because you are not in their shoes. I am not in your shoes. So I cannot even begin to imagine what you mean when you use certain terms. It's very important when you deal with children or juvenile witnesses. It's also very important when you deal with victim statements, because victims will call certain things a certain term. If you are investigating a racially motivated incident or an allegation of racism, the exact words, the exact terms have to be written down. Make sure that within the statement, the elements of the crime are clearly captured. Otherwise, the public prosecutor can't prosecute the suspect. Capture the details, description of people, what they were wearing, height, gender, how they walked, tattoos, scars. What did the suspect look like? Was there one? Was there two? Stolen items, the stuff that you lost, your property. What is important when you speak to the complainant right in the beginning? And when you interview that person, you are going to ask yourself, okay, what crime am I hearing here? Now, in a corporate environment, this is oftentimes given to you on a platter. When you get your letter of engagement, you are told that you must investigate an allegation of absenteeism. Bernadine was absent from the office from Monday the 3rd of October until Friday the 7th of October. She did not report to work. She did not phone her line manager. And this is a transgression in terms of the disciplinary policy ABC. So there you already have what the offense was. Then you need to go and look at, okay, what are the elements that you will have to prove? In terms of a criminal offense, so this is something like a common law crime. Guys, we dealt with this in FOR1502, or a statutory law crime. There are specific elements that you have to make sure are captured in the statement. Then you have to ask the person, do they suspect someone specific? Let's say the person's purse was stolen out of the office. Do they suspect someone specific? Yes, I suspect it was Jonathan. But why do you suspect it was Jonathan? Then you ask them that. There might be a reason why the person thinks it's Jonathan. If it's like an assault or something where the person was, let's say a purse was snatched or a cell phone was snatched, would they recognize the suspect if they saw them again? It's very important to ask these questions, because if the person says, yes, I will recognize this person again, then you know if you have a suspect, then you can have a lineup or a photo lineup. But if the person says, no, there's no way I'm going to recognize the person because I didn't see them, then it doesn't even help that you go for an option of a lineup. Then it's important that you ask the person, did this person have any legal right to come into your office and take your purse, to come into your yard and take your car or take your property? Because that speaks to the element of the unlawful nature. Nah? And then, very important, do you wish further investigation? Some people need a CAS number, that's the number you get from the police station, just for insurance purposes, to prove that they've reported the matter to the police. If you say you require no further investigation, your docket will be registered and it will be closed. No further investigation. The victim does not require further investigation. So in terms of the body, a very comprehensive narrative in the first person by the deponent about what happened. There has to be a logic flow, and you have to clearly see at the end of the day, okay, so this is definitely a theft. And then probably one of the things that the majority of the police officials shrug off as not important. This is probably one of the most important things that needs to be done, is the oath section. You would have, in your discussion with the victim or the witness, the deponent, the person making the statement, ask them, would you be making the statement under oath? Or do you have an objection to taking the oath? I don't have an objection. So then your statement will begin. I, Bernadine Carol Benson, state under oath in English. But if I say, no, I consider God a fallacy, then my statement will read, I, Bernadine Carol Benson, affirm in English, because I'm not going to go under oath because I don't believe in God. So my statement is now under oath, and therefore my oath section, you must ask the deponent, do you know and understand the content of the statement? You're going to let them read the statement and they're going to be happy. and then you're going to say, do you know and understand the content of the statement? Then the person should say, yes, I know and understand the content of the statement. Then you ask the person, do you have any objection to taking the prescribed oath? Then the person should answer you, no, I have no objection to taking the prescribed oath. Do you consider the oath to be binding on your conscience? Yes, I consider the oath to be binding on your conscience. Please raise your right hand and say, so help me God. So help me God. Now the statement is under oath. If this does not happen, your statement is not under oath. Bottom line, I have been to the police station on many occasions where I've had to make sworn statements for various reasons. And I have never been asked this question. So I will silently under my breath say that the statement is true. So help me God. Then I know in my heart, my statement is under oath. But I beg you, please don't, at the next time you're at the police station, tell the policeman, hey, that statement isn't under oath. My lecturer says you must do this, that, and the next. That is not that is not our job. But as a corporate investigator, if you're a commissioner of oaths, that's your job. Okay, so the commissioner of oaths section, all police officials are commissioner of oaths. But if you're a corporate detective or if you're a private detective, you can become a commissioner of oaths by applying and going through a process. But what you see here is usually in a stamp format, and it's given, the police official stamps it onto your statement, and he crosses out certain things, and he signs, and he writes his name and his service number and his address. What I want you to take note of is the very first paragraph here. I certify, this is now the commissioner of oaths, that the deponent, in other words, you, from who the statement came, has acknowledged that he or she knows and understands the contents of the statement. So if it is a female, you're going to cross out the he, and you're going to initial you and the police official. The statement was sworn to or affirmed before me, cross out the relevant one, and the deponent's signature, thumbprint, or mark, cross out the relevant one, was placed thereon in my presence at Pretoria, date and time. Then the signature of the Commissioner of Oaths, their full name and surname, then the word Commissioner of Oaths, with then usually their service number and the physical address of the police station. Now, this usually comes in the form, as I said, of a stamp, and I know some other Commissioner of Oaths also have a stamp that they use. So this covers the statement. I'm going to pause quickly before we go on with the next section, and I'm going to ask if there are any burning questions at this stage that you would like me to address now. You can just raise your hand if you have a question. I'm going to count down from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so no questions. I'm going to then continue with the next section. And in the next section, I'm going to talk about these things. I'm sure you all have seen this. The left side is a puzzle. And puzzles usually come in boxes, and the box has a picture on it. So once you throw everything on the table, you are working towards recreating a picture. On the right-hand side is a Rubik's Cube. When you buy it, all the colors are aligned. And then you shift, and then you must try and get all the colors aligned again. Now, I used to cheat. I used to break my Rubik's Cube apart, and then I used to put the colors back together because I simply couldn't hack this. This was not my forte. How many of you know Tetris, the one on the left? I don't like that thing. It makes me very nervous. The one in the middle, I think it's Sudoku. And the one on the right is a maze. These are all puzzles and types of puzzles. Here's another puzzle. A man was found dead with a cassette recorder in one hand and a gun in the other. When the police came in, they immediately pressed the play button on the cassette. The man's voice said, "I have nothing else to live for. I can't go on." Then the sound of a gunshot. After listening to the cassette tape, the police knew that it was not a suicide. How did they know that? Does anybody want to guess how they knew that? Shall I answer for you? Well, it's relatively simple. If the person died when they pulled the trigger, who pressed the stop button on the cassette recorder and who pressed the reverse button on the cassette recorder? So these are the things we look for. Crime scenes like this one. Look at all the debris there. Look at all those little yellow tags. Look at how the people are dressed. Those are crime scene technicians. Crime scenes are like puzzles. With the exception, there's no picture and there's no box. So you have to imagine what the original picture looked like. You may have heard of crime scene reconstruction. They did that with the Oscar Pistorius case, especially in terms of the cricket bat and the gunshots. And through that, they proved that his version of the events did not match the evidence. So when you deal with a crime scene, there are clues about what happened there. And you are the puzzle builder. You have to sort out those clues. You have to figure out the clues, and you have to rebuild that puzzle so that at the end of the day, you get to the truth. This is where your evidence comes in. Now, physical evidence like DNA and fingerprints and CCTV footage and ballistics and primer residue, that type of evidence is what we call a very unbiased evidence. Not only the person's fingerprints, their footprints, but their hair, fibers from the clothing, the glass they break, the tool mark they leave, paint these scratches, the blood or semen they deposit or collect. All these things and more bear mute witness against him, the suspect. This is evidence that does not forget, and I want to add, that does not lie. And this type of evidence's memory does not fade. It is what it is. And when you find this at the scene, you can make certain deductions from this. And this is the reason why I love using crossword puzzles. Because it forces you to work through the study guide, because you only have the study guide. And you have to think critically about the clues and the answers that you ultimately select. Now, I know that some of you feel like that popcorn man on the left, and you want to pull your hair out of your head when you see, oh, this woman and her crossword puzzles. But it's teaching you a skill. You know, when you train for something or you work towards something and it doesn't come to you naturally, it's hard in the beginning. It's really, really hard. You know what? If this was easy, everybody would do it. But it's not easy because you have to train your brain to think about things in a certain way and look at things in a certain way. You have to think critically about the clues that are given and ultimately the answers that you select, because the different answers must align with each other. If you look at the picture there, one across has 2, 4, 6 letters. One down has 2, 4, 6 letters. One down and one across must start with the same letter. So if one across is pencil, one down cannot be pen. One down could be papers. So you cannot force the evidence to say what you want it to say if it doesn't fit in there. So too, you cannot force the words of a crossword puzzle to say what they don't say. It's as simple as that. If it doesn't fit, one of the two options are wrong. You have to think critically and sometimes consider alternatives. And eventually you will get the answer. Some people are naturally inclined to this. Some people love this. Other people, I personally don't like a crossword puzzle because I'm not very good at it. Because the crossword puzzles you get in books and newspapers are very, very broad. It's about everything. But I love these crossword puzzles because I have the text at hand. I can look in the study guide for the answer because the answers are here. I didn't grab them out of the sky. The answers are here. But what the crossword puzzle also teaches me and should teach you is accuracy. So one of the aspects of good statement taking and good report writing is accuracy. What do I mean by that? I mean that I have to look at how I spell words so that my words align and it says what I mean it to say in the text. Because some of you do not complete the crossword puzzle like that. You do the down and then you do the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 down, and then you will write the answers out. But because you are not working in the blocks, sometimes you make spelling mistakes and then it's wrong. Then you get marked wrong because in terms of statement taking and investigation, you cannot afford to make a mistake like that. Accuracy is key and sometimes costly in a court of law. So that's the primary reason I gave you a crossword puzzle. And when you do the crossword puzzle, if your first clue is, now I need to find your crossword puzzle quickly. One of the reasons why suspects confess, what do you do then? Well, you go and look at the study units and you go and look, okay, where do we deal with confessions? Okay. Investigative interviewing, it's not there. Statements, notes, confessions, 2.6. Then you go to paragraph 2.6 and you see it's on page 24. And now we start reading. Confessions. And there is confessions. And you read up on confessions. And that is where you find the answers. Now, if you have a PDF of your study guide, you can do a search function. And you can open the PDF, and by the little hourglass, you type in confession, and you search. And then you can read up everywhere where the study guide talks about a confession. And there you are going to find one of the reasons why suspects confess. And you will be able to complete it. And that covers the statements. And that covers our class for this evening. So let us take some questions. I'm going to ask that you raise your hand if you want to ask a question so that I can acknowledge your hand. and then I will take 3 questions, and then we will answer, and then we will take the next 3. If you are not comfortable to ask, you are more than welcome in the chat box to jot down the question that you have, and then I will take it from there. I take it from, Tobile. Tobile, I recognize your hand. I'm going to wait a couple moments to see if there's perhaps another hand. Okay, Tobile, there's not another hand. So you may unmute yourself and throw your question. Tobile, are you able to unmute yourself?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Good evening.
Hi.
I have a question. In the assignment, when it says like we must list the items, are we supposed to also like paraphrase, like, I'm not sure, like it's a short phrase, like owns a vehicle and stuff like that. Can we just write it as is or not?
If it's an item, if it's like, what are the different types of evidence that can be found at a rape scene? If it's blood, it's blood. If it's DNA, it's DNA. If it's fingerprints, it's fingerprints. So there are some concepts, terms, phrases that you simply cannot paraphrase. But if I ask you to explain the process of, that's where the paraphrasing comes in.
Okay, thank you, Miss.
Sure. Tobile, you can lower your hand. Do we have any other questions? Karabo, don't you have a question for me? Kabetswe? Nompumelelu, any questions? And there is nothing in the chat. Ah, Karabo is writing something. So we will wait for Karabo to finish writing. Okay, Karabo doesn't have a question. Thank you, Karabo. I don't know what has gone on with the MyUnisa system, and I only realized tonight that it doesn't seem that the email about this training went out. But what I will be doing is I will be sending the link for the training. I will post it under one of the discussions on the module site. So you're not going to get an actual email from the module site, but there will be a discussion labeled live class of the 22nd of September. So please share this with your fellow students who totally missed out on tonight's session, so that they are aware that there will be a recording available. If there are no further questions, we are 8 minutes before 7. I'm going to say thank you very much for taking the time to come and attend this session. I have all of your names, so I'm going to specifically look for your assessments when they come in. And I hope that I see brilliant work, because you now have the added insight from this training. Going forward, there will be additional training, and I'm going to try and host a session before the exam so that we can go through exam scope. So please be on the lookout for messages. It might not always be in the form of an email, but it might just come from an announcement from your module site. So if there's nothing else, I'm going to bid everybody a good night. Have an awesome evening. Grace has raised her hand. Yes, Grace, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, please, I have a question about the question 3.
About what, Grace?
About the assignment question 3.
Yes.
Can you please explain it a bit to me, because I was not available with time you explained that part.
Okay.
Like, what is it?
Grace, I can't hear you. Your audio is cutting out.
Okay. I was saying, can you please explain to me question 3
Yeah. Okay.
of the assignment?
Can you please read question 3 to me and tell me what is it that you don't understand?
That part where they said I have to write a statement, ne?
Mm-hmm.
That statement, I have to write it as in maybe I'm the investigator writing that statement.
Yes. Yes, you're the investigator.
Or I have, yes. Then Paul is telling what's happening that day. Right?
Yes.
So I must write it according, like I'm here with Paul. Paul is telling me whatever that happened that day.
Yes. Did you miss the first part? Did you miss the first part of the training, Grace, of the session?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm going to ask that you go and look at the recording, because we discussed this and we unpack it in the recording. And then if there's something that you still don't understand, then you email me.
Okay.
But the questions you've asked are discussed and unpacked in the training.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Grace.
Okay. Thanks, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, everybody, if there are no more questions, I'm going to bid you all a good evening, and then we shall meet again online really soon. Have a brilliant evening.